Another warm welcome to the centre of Edinburgh in this amazing Royal Bank of Scotland building. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Blair. I'm going to let Blair introduce his company and himself and give us a bit of background and journey on where you've been.
Great, thank you very much, Michael.
Welcome.
Yeah, my name's Blair Porter. I'm creative director and co-founder of Where Giants Roam. We're a CGI company based just outside of Edinburgh.
CGI for the people?
Yeah, computer generated images. Okay. So primarily working within the housing sector. We do a lot of work with drinks and packaging, interior architects. You know, it's quite broad ranging.
And housing sector is that commercial or residential?
We do mainly residential. So we work with Cala Homes, a sort of big Scottish
house builder.
Okay. Yeah. So we work primarily with them, and we do a lot of work within the drinks industry, visualising not only products but also brand homes and distilleries and new sort of visitor experiences.
Is it your business?
It is. Yes, it's myself and my wife. We're sort of we're sort of co-owners, and yeah. Some people say we're mad, but I think it's it works well for us, and we sort of egg each other on and sort of push through the hard times and enjoy the good times together as well.
When did you set it up? So
I started the business as it was back then, Render Studio. That was about 12, maybe 13 years ago. Okay. Sort of born out of the 2008 recession. I worked for a small architecture practice. And we were so small that I was invoicing all my own projects, and I could see what I was throwing out of the business and what I was taking in, and it soon became very apparent that it wasn't terribly sustainable. So at that point, I volunteered to go down to 4-day week and started up what was Render Studio, which essentially was a 3D plug-in service for architects and interior designers, so that we could do. Or I could do at the time, 3D visuals for interior spaces, or for, as it was at the time, it was pretty small scale architectural residential work. Okay. And from there, essentially, I worked pretty much by myself for about 7 years. And then my wife was marketing and professional services, and we were very separate career paths at that point. And then I think maybe 5 years ago, maybe employed our first staff off the back of winning a contract with Cala Homes, which allowed us to sort of take the first step into sort of recruitment. And then following that, we sort of grew to around about 5 people pre-pandemic. And we lost a couple just before the pandemic hit, so we were down to 3.
Literally months before?
Literally, yeah. So the couple, there were a couple as well, actually. They handed in their notice, like literally middle of January, I think it was, sort of 2020 would have been, yeah.
How many staff did you have at that time?
So we were at 5, and then we went down to 3 for the start of the pandemic, so yeah.
So you had 2 concerns?
Yes.
March 23rd.
Big time. Yeah, we were really busy at the time as well. And then, as with probably most businesses, as the pandemic hit, everything stopped, 3 months.
So was that a favour?
Yeah. In hindsight, yes. At the time, it was an absolute nightmare, as, anyone that, runs business will know that, this, turnover of staff is something you want to try and avoid. And yeah, there had been some difficulties there at the time, but I think we were really, it was a bit of a shock to the system. I took it very personally, because I was like, why would someone want to leave what we're building here? But yeah, we didn't need to furlough anyone within the business, and we managed to sort of keep going because we were relatively small, and we had enough sort of work to keep us going in the short term.
And your background before working with the architecture company, had you always been in that line of work?
Yeah, I'd always been in architecture. I trained in architectural technology and worked in architecture practices in Edinburgh for about 7 years before sort of taking the leap.
Okay. Big concerns, or?
Yeah, there was always concerns. It was always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to run my own business. I always had that kind of...
You had that?
Yeah, drive. My dad was self-employed.
Was he?
and that was something that I kind of looked up to and aspired to be like, as you know, many people would. So I found that, you know, this, whilst the step was scary, it felt like it was a good time to do it. There was no kids or responsibilities or anything like that. So essentially it was just survival mode, and, you know, can I make enough money to sort of survive?
So March 23rd came, 2 people left,
Yeah.
just like half of your business.
Yeah.
You lose it, and then the pandemic hit. What happened?
So the first 3 months were pretty much nothing. There was a real lull, I think, like most businesses. And then slowly things started to turn around. I have to say, we were obviously on the RBS, or NatWest Accelerator Programme. And I think at the time we were dealing with Gabby or Jill, and, you know, they were a fantastic assistance to us. At the start of the pandemic, no one knew what was going on, and they were a great assistance for us, just to be able to sort of calm us down and let us know that that other people were going through the exact same thing. And our accountants were amazing as well at that, at sort of crisis meetings, and, you know, 11 o'clock at night, you know, and, you know, having these calls to sort of, you know, reassure everyone that everything was fine.
And so what would that crisis call entail? So you would call and speak and say, what do I do?
It was basically, I think our accountant basically contacted all of their clients and sat them down and said, right, this is what you need to do. We've taken a look at your books, and we think that, you know, you've maybe got, you know, outgoings here that you maybe don't require, and, you know, cancel all the subscriptions that you don't need, and try to be as sort of lean as possible, and use this as an opportunity to try and sort of, you know, realign slightly. We were in a pretty good place anyway.
Especially after 2 of your biggest
exactly,
costs.
yeah. So so that all kind of worked out fine. We just taken over 5 months into a new lease of an office, so that kind of sat empty for a good while. But yeah, it was, you know, part and parcel of everyone went through it. Like I say, we're very fortunate. After 3 months, we started picking up some work, and we often are pitching against photographers. Often, if we're doing product, we call it virtual photography, but essentially we'll model the bottles and packaging, and sort of set up virtual shoots. So often we're pitching against photographers who would do that normally or naturally. And so all those shoots had been cancelled because no one could get into a studio to shoot. So we found that some of the projects were coming to us, you know, that maybe we wouldn't have potentially got previously. So I think from our point of view, it then became quite apparent that there was real benefit in what we were doing. But it was very difficult at the time, because you didn't want to appear that you were sort of profiteering out of, you know, a pandemic. And I found that personally quite a difficult thing to sort of, you know, I didn't want to, you know, hit the marketing drive and say, come to us because we can solve all your problems, you know, when other people were going through such hard times as well. And
you mentioned Royal Bank of Scotland being quite proactive, and you mentioned in our chat before we came on live on air, you mentioned about how it created such a great feeling for you working with somebody like Royal Bank of Scotland. Yeah. Can you expand on that?
I think it's the accelerator was a real moment in time for the business. I think we were, you know, not really knowing our way. You know, we were just learning by doing, and sometimes making mistakes and learning by those mistakes. And when we came on to the accelerator program, it was almost like reassurance that, okay, what you're doing is right and that's sensible, and have you thought about doing this? And that sort of advice was invaluable, really, to make sure that we sort of grew the business. And it also gave us the confidence to grow. I think so it wasn't just banking advice. It wasn't it was business. It was business, it was HR, it was, you know, sort of team building. It was all this kind of stuff that Gabby, Mel and Jill, you know, the whole team, Amanda as well, you know, everyone's helped us get to a place where, you know, if we've got any problems, we can easily just pick up the phone and speak to them, and they've been, you know, incredibly helpful. But I think one of the noticeable things for me at the very start was, and touching back on when I went freelance essentially, was to just make ends meet essentially. And one of the NatWest Accelerator programs, one of the events, I think it was on goals or visioning or something like that. And I think it was Mel that was maybe doing the event, and he said, "Hands up here, whose goals have changed since they started the business?" And of course, mine had, because it was literally to, earn enough money to feed, pay the mortgage and put food on the table. But it suddenly dawned on me at that point I'd never actually realigned goals.
Sure.
So that was all well in the past, and the business was doing really well, but we weren't really aiming at anything. And
probably because you were in the business, not on the business.
100%. Yeah, and
it's amazing, isn't it?
And so the Royal Bank of Scotland programme has really helped us sort of detach ourselves a little bit from the business, and even just forcing us to take days in Edinburgh at the entrepreneurial hub to take time out of the business to spend it on the business and actually, look at it from afar, which has been really, really great.
That's great feedback for Royal Bank of Scotland. That was totally unscripted. We didn't agree that would be something that we would touch on, but I hear from so many people, and we're here at Royal Bank of Scotland today, it feels like I have to say it, but I don't. It just comes from each person that keeps coming along to us and giving that experience, that good experience, that they might not have even been here if it weren't for that kind of help and advice. So well played to them, but obviously they'll get that back in droves. They know that that's an investment that they're going to reap in the future, because you're going to become loyal, eh?
100%.
Yeah. It's great. It's simple, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd like to turn to, so right now, you've come through the pandemic and you still have a viable business. Mm-hmm. Has it been tough through that pandemic?
I think we were in a slightly unusual position that we grew quite significantly through the pandemic. Wow. So I think we coming out of the pandemic, we were at 12 people. So yeah,
wow, okay. So three,
and then
12.
Yeah, to 12. So that was a challenge. Our office is a relatively big office, so we were able to socially distance within the office. So we were able to sort of get back into the studio, relatively early.
All 12 people.
Not all 12. Not all 12 people at the start. We had one of our lead artists, actually. He came from an agency in London. He worked from London for a good while first, and then moved up.
Do you need people to be in the office for your business?
We don't. We've actually just recently hired our first fully remote new business and account manager in Cornwall. It's a nice part of the world to be, and I think it's interesting because we are quite small,
okay.
And we're quite hands-on, and we want to be this close-knit team. So I think the remote thing works for certain industries, and it works brilliantly for maybe like the financial industry, for example. But I think in terms of creative, it's quite good to be in a room bouncing ideas around with each other. I think that is something that we found through the pandemic was quite difficult, even with Teams and Zoom and all the other collaborative processes, Slack, whatever. I think it's still not quite as good as actually being in a room together and just scribbling some stuff out and throwing ideas around.
With the whole working from home process through the pandemic, has anything changed for you in terms of the dynamics attracting and retaining staff? Because time and time again, we speak to business owners and controllers, and they talk to us all the time about the problems and the issues that they have because the pandemic's created a completely different employment environment.
Yeah.
How's that affected you?
Yeah, it's tough. I think it can be. Yeah, I think the thing that we've noticed is that a lot of people who potentially have the experience to work from home don't want to work from home.
So they actively don't want to work from home.
So the
messages from Whitehall is get back to your desk.
Yeah. But yeah, so our experience is the people that have the experience that would be able to work from home actually want to be in the office and be in that sort of culture and having that kind of camaraderie. And I don't know if that's because pre-pandemic they were used to that and then it was starved of it through the pandemic and wanted to be back in that environment again. I don't know. It may just be a freak of the industry that we're in. Yeah. But certainly we've noticed quite a lot of the maybe more junior staff, but because it's obviously in the sort of media about working from home, I think that's more of the norm. And our experience is very much that because we have a lot of interns that come in and we then will maybe keep them on as full-time members of staff. So we've got a relatively young team and we have to, train quite a lot within, because it's a really niche thing that we do. And it's just not possible to do remotely. It's really difficult.
Have you had to change the things that you offer in order to try to attract people into your business?
Yeah, I mean, we are relatively flexible. If people need to work from home, they can work from home. The facility's there. So, but we would always, I think the flexible working thing, I find it, a funny term sometimes because you're thinking about it. It's flexible. It's two days from home, 3 days in the office, and every week, which isn't flexible at all. So so we are flexible in the fact if someone's got to get a delivery of something, whatever, no problems working from home. And also if people have got a real kind of data or manual task that they just need to get their head down and get on with stuff. I know myself, I'll try and clear out so I can get on with that task, and I think that in terms of productivity is great because people have the option and they can go and do that. But to be able to do that all the time, I don't know if it exactly works for our business.
Sure. And what does the future look like? What does 23 approaching 2023 look like?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the interesting things about the pandemic actually for us was that we entered the pandemic with the majority of our client base in Scotland, a small percentage in London and a small percentage in the States. And that coming out of pandemic almost flipped on its head where we do a lot of work for Calla Homes and Brewdog, and they're sort of our two bigger kind of clients within Scotland. But most of our work is now London and in the States, so it kind of flipped on its head, which was funny. So we see more growth in the States. So my wife's Australian. At the start of the year, once things started opening up, we went over and worked from Australia for 9 weeks. We were over there. So that was extremely hard. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, the time zone was impossible to sort of. We ended up. We've got 2 young kids, and they were seeing their grandparents, and we would be doing things during the day with them, and then at night we would put the kids to bed and then start working UK time, and then we'd work till on a good night midnight. And the kids were up at 6 o'clock, whatever, So, so that was, but it was we didn't mind because we hadn't seen our Australian friends and family for, 2 years. So,
but what an experience to go through.
It was good. It was also, you could see it was actually very eye-opening as well because you could see that it would be beneficial to have a studio, say. We were doing a project with an agency in San Francisco at the time. I'm trying to get a call arranged. San Fran, Edinburgh, and Australia was, it was near on impossible.
It's probably the 3 worst.
Exactly. So we definitely had. You then suddenly start seeing the benefits of it. Actually, we could, if we had a studio overseas, then Yeah, it's not on the immediate horizon, but it's definitely I would say in the sort of.
Okay, so we've gone through a bit of a journey in terms of the business, and you're saying that 2023 looks like because of the changes in dynamics of local to international.
Yeah.
I mean, normally it's local, regional, national, international. You've gone the full hog straight away. In terms of the way in which you then approach marketing has to be completely different in terms of the dynamics of that marketing, or is it?
Yeah, as I said, my wife's background is in marketing, and we have to this point done probably zero marketing.
Boy.
Our marketing is social media. And we're very fortunate, and one thing that we've campaigned quite hard for is to get credited for our work.
Okay.
So when we do work for these big agencies, as soon as they credit us, then other people will say, "Oh, Blair Giants Rome did this work. We need to get in touch with them." And that was it's grown organically through word of mouth, through social media, essentially.
Through the accreditation.
Yeah, and that in itself has been quite difficult, and that has changed over the last 3 or 4 years, because before people were quite hesitant of saying this is a computer generated image because people would think it was maybe like a concept for a whiskey bottle, or it was maybe a concept for whatever it was
instead of
being real. So one of our frustrations used to always be that photographers would always get credited for the photographs and visual artists wouldn't. So there has been a big shift in that now, and I think that's it feels like it's about time, and yeah, it's something we pushed really hard for, and it's been I would say definitely part of the growth of the business.
It's been fascinating listening to your journey, the industry. Is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to cover? Is there anything that you'd like to sort of self-promote, or certainly give us a little bit of an insight into? Is there anything at all? And there doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I think just a big thank you to RBS really for the sort of continued support. And we started on the program, I think probably maybe 3 years ago now, and through that process we went through Accelerator and then on to Next Level, and everyone that we've dealt with within the bank has been extremely supportive and always looking to try and sell us in at any opportunity to sort of form links and collaborations and extend the networks between all the entrepreneurs and try and forge links that way. And that's been it's great to see.
It's commendable, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's been a really amazing experience. And one of my good friends has a creative agency in Glasgow, and he sort of did a rebrand, didn't even touch on that. We were called Render Studio, and we changed to Where Giants Roam about a year ago to try and change the type of work that we were doing to make it more creative rather than Render Studio was quite functional. This was more kind of sort of creative based. We wanted to help people solve their problems. And so we recommended to him to go on to the Accelerator program when they opened up the opportunity, and he's now on that and really enjoying that as well in the Glasgow cohort.
So I bet he loves you for passing him on. Well, thanks ever so much, Blair. It's been a fascinating insight into your world.
Thanks very much,
and I know our viewers and listeners out there. Until next time.